The main thing I remember about John Murnane are sleepovers. Sean and I were friends since birth, and as a preteen, I would sleep over at the Murnane house often as my parents would let me. And I want to be clear on this, when I was sleeping over there, I was doing so not to just play and hang out with my good friend Sean, but with John as well. And from all of those sleepovers, I think the main lesson I learned from John Murnane is that growing up is for suckers. Suckers with no sense of joy, suckers with no sense of wonder, and no sense of play. Whether we were having lightsaber fights with these long, thin pillows, or reading comic books, or playing Atari or ColecoVision games, or hooking up two VCRs and copying rented videotapes, John was in on all of it with us. But what I remember most, what I think it was most about, was talking about all this stuff. What was good, what was bad, and why things that were great were great. And although this was someone much older, much wiser, and someone who had just consumed a lot more media than me, John never spoke down to me. I always got this welcoming feeling that I was being treated like a peer. And I want to be clear, he wasn't like pontificating to be impressed with himself, talking to kids. I wanted to learn this from him. You know, this was a two-way street, and it was wonderful. I completely learned from him that trivia is cool, really cool. And he knew a ton of it. So much. And I'm still impressed with it. To this day, everything that he knew. And I'm hard to impress that way. I mean, he was like a top gun with that regard. But it wasn't just about knowledge. It wasn't just about tidbits and facts. I think the main thing that I got from all of these sleepovers with John and Sean, what I got from the sleepovers were both of them, but what I got from John is just what it means to have good taste. Really good taste. And it's like, I know I've called him a geek, and he was, and that was a more pejorative term in the early 80s than it is now. But John was super cool. He had a 64 Vet, he had a leather jacket. John Murnane was like Quentin Tarantino meets Fonzie. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what he was. And Sean and I, although we were good friends, we were also collecting rivals, you know, over comic books and all this other stuff. And it got pretty fierce at times. And it was incredibly important to John that his son defeat me in this regard. And most of the time, it wasn't close. They would crush me together. Like, if we all went to a comic book convention together, and we went to a lot of them, and there was like some super special, amazing deal on the convention floor, guaranteed John Murnane would find it before me. And it gives me no great pleasure to admit that, but it was 100% the truth. And as a parent now, I just find it so cool and rare that he was always on the same wavelength with Sean in that regard, and that he took such joy in defeating me for him. I'm just so impressed with that, and I think about that a lot. I miss you, John, and I bow before all of your trivia erudition, which always meant so much to me.